Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 15th of April, and this is the Brussels Playbook podcast. The vibe in Brussels today, as you may have noticed, busy. Life is returning to normal after the Easter holidays, and world events mean that not for the first time, the issues that the EU really want to talk about are being squeezed out. Also on the podcast today, the rise of the centrist ads. Politico's top story this morning features Alexander Stubb, the president of Finland, and how his brand of liberal intellectualism is fighting back against the firebrands. And finally, something fun. You probably saw the picture that Donald Trump posted appearing to portray himself as Jesus. He backpedaled, saying the image was actually him of a doctor. So we've been taking a look in the archives of other classic excuses by politicians over time. I'm Ian Wishart, Politico's senior EU politics editor, and joining me today is a real blast from the past, Ryan Heath. Hello.
Hey Ian, it's great to be here in this palace of a podcast studio.
Was it not like this in your day?
It was absolutely not like this in my day.
You were the original Brussels Playbook author. You set it up 10 years ago, and you were the original host of the EU Confidential podcast. Is that right?
It's true, and surviving, that's my greatest skill. So that's what brings me back here today.
But I met you in, 2011, 2012, when you were European Commission spokesperson?
I think even before that.
2010, probably, then, yeah.
It's over mulled wine in a very small apartment. So.
I remember it well, unfortunately. But you're back with us just for a few weeks because you're going to launch the new playbook in Australia. Are we allowed to say that?
We are allowed to say that. Canberra Playbook is coming your way. So if you didn't have too many newsletters, sign up to this one.
Well, one thing that hasn't changed, Ryan, since you were here 10, 15 years ago, is European councils and their ability to get derailed by world events. The first story we're going to talk about today is that how the ambassadors are meeting today, making preparations for the summit in Cyprus next week. The agenda already looks huge. It was supposed to be about the long-term EU budget, the MFF, and enlargement and competitiveness and that sort of thing. But as usual, it's been overtaken by events, and they're going to take a long time talking about the Middle East.
Exactly like last month when the single market got pushed aside. So they're in serious danger of giving the Parliament what they asked for, which is to delay this MFF discussion. The competitiveness roadmap, okay, that's basically ready, off the agenda. Enlargement, poor Montenegro, they're not going to get a look in this time round. And, you've got a bunch of officials who think they have 10 topics to discuss and not enough time.
Yeah, the thing is, though, if you have 27 presidents and prime ministers meeting in a room together and not that often, obviously they're going to do what we want to do, which is talk about the big events of the day, aren't they? That's the sexy stuff. Why would you want to talk about a 7-year budget with a deadline that's still more than a year away?
Exactly. Or maybe you actually just want to celebrate that Viktor Orbán won't be there.
Will he be there or not? I mean, we still don't quite know whether he'll be there or not. We're having conflicting messages. Obviously, he might want to make one last appearance, do you think, and get his signed photo or whatever he gets as a present for being the last leader.
I'm not sure he was in it for the swag, but I do think he might want to stir the pot one more time.
Well, he might, particularly as the last European Council, Antonio Costa, the council president, called Orbán's behaviour unacceptable, which is quite strong, really, isn't it, to talk about a fellow leader like that?
It certainly is, but when you have the sense that they're 11 points behind in the polls, you can get on with that sort of language. I guess the question for Viktor Orbán is, does he want to oversee a sea of shredders and whatever else he's doing in these last days of his government, or does he want to turn up and not get the gold watch that other leaders might be given at their final summit?
We've got a story coming out this morning, which people can read about how actually Orbán, the big bad boy of European councils, could actually be replaced by other characters. I don't know if you've seen the list we've drawn up, Ryan.
I have.
Who's your top pick?
I actually think it's someone who's not on the list. I think Jordan Bardella in France, who desperately wants to get to that summit table.
Yeah.
And if he gets there, it's existential for the EU, so he's suddenly going to make Orbán look like a kindergarten teacher.
A European Council with a national rally president turning up, everything changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that is a lifetime popcorn subscription.
On our list is some more predictable ones. Robert Fico, the Slovakia Prime Minister, and Babiš, Meloni, obviously, of Italy. Those are the ones that are already caused a bit of trouble.
Yeah, and Babiš, who doesn't like out-of-control billionaire? They're good for newspaper sales, they're good for website clicks, so, my money's on him.
So we'll talk a bit more in the coming days, I'm sure, before the summit takes place next week on Thursday and Friday. Antonio Costa, the president of the council, sent his invitation letter out to leaders yesterday afternoon. That's always a good guide of sort of how the agenda is taking shape. And he did say that the aim of the summit will be twofold: to address what he calls a challenging geopolitical environment and Europe's response to it, and also provide political guidance for the work on the MFF for the budget to prepare the ground for the agreement by the end of the year. So there's a lot to do over 2 days, which is actually a dinner the night before and then sort of the morning and the afternoon the next day. But yeah, what can they do?
They're earning the medium bucks or the medium euros this time around, that's for sure.
Our next story today, Ryan, we're going to talk about political friendships. What draws two people together? How can personal chemistry possibly steer world events? And we're talking about that because in Ottawa today, in Canada, you've got this slightly unexpected double act of Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, with the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb. And our colleague Tim Ross has been looking at the two and what they have in common, and he calls them sort of the centrist dads. It's interesting, isn't it, this double act?
It is. Politics is a lonely profession, so anytime you can find a friendship, that's got to count as a win. I don't know. I don't really think of the two of them as centrist dads first and foremost, though. Someone like Alexander Stubb, he is a intense overachiever who does
He's a triathlete,
Ironman
isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Centrist dad, that's the least interesting thing.
Well, I remember interviewing once about how he used to like doing diplomacy in saunas. So that's my fun fact about him.
If you've got it, flaunt it. I think that's the approach Alex takes to the situation.
It's interesting, though, that these personal dynamics between these really important politicians and who you think probably only communicate through their aides or through diplomats, and actually they don't. Tim has been talking about how they're sharing regular text messages with each other. They're calling each other. They went jogging when they met up in London round Hyde Park a month ago. When you were at the Commission, Ryan, did you see how these personal dynamics actually were probably more important than anything else when it came to sort of shaping policy and that kind of thing?
Absolutely the case. So I used to work for Nelly Cruz, and she
was the commissioner for what? Digital, was it called at the time?
Digital, and she was competition before that,
right.
So the Margaret Vestager of her day.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was big into socializing. She did things face-to-face or on the phone if she could. She didn't do official correspondence and things like that. Her fridge was full of champagne and olives, and that was the way
I can see why you were drawn to her now.
I'm that obvious, am I?
But it is personal chemistry as much as anything else. You definitely see it with Donald Trump. I mean, he's kind of an extreme case. Mm-hmm. He does business with the people he likes, and he's quite open about that.
Yep. And when you have, let's call him chaos dad in the White House, as opposed to centrist dad, then, that's a low trust relationship for a lot of leaders. So if they can find someone they do trust, that's why they double down on it.
In Stubb and Mark Carney's case, they're kind of drawn to each other, not just through ideology, but when you think about the geography, Canada right next to the US, and you've got, this big leader there who's kind of threatening the border and all the rest of it and territory. And obviously Stubb in Finland with Russia next door too. I mean, there are things in common there.
Absolutely. And when you're just a middle power, you've got to stick together with the other middle powers. Otherwise, you don't get anywhere. Do
you think there is a case these days for sort of the centre ground starting to fight back against sort of populism and the far right and the far left? Or do you think the far right and the far left have still got some way to go? That was the question after Orbán lost the other day.
The centre needs to do a lot more, that's for sure. Okay, there's some hope if you can move a somewhat authoritarian figure out of office. But the middle powers have to do more than just have a couple of WhatsApp chats. Like, they've got to get together in forums, they've got to take common positions, and they're years away from doing that, but they're starting to move.
And going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago about the EU summit, it's very easy to dismiss the need for big summits, and they cost a lot of money, and why are they going there just for a day or two on a nice island? But actually, having that face-to-face contact actually is really important, isn't it, when it comes to world affairs?
Yep.
I think.
And like I've always said about the EU, it's a lot cheaper than a war. So whatever you don't like about the EU, stack it up against
that.
World
Should
War
be our
III.
that should be our motto for this podcast. It's a lot cheaper than a war.
It's a pretty big studio. I'm not sure how much cheaper, actually.
Okay, Ryan, our third story. You saw presumably this AI image of Donald Trump as Jesus?
I did. It looked like every little card I received at reconciliation and confirmation and communion growing up at Catholic school.
Now, he didn't apologise. He said everybody was misinterpreting it because actually he wasn't Jesus, he was a doctor.
Oh, yeah.
When you were commission spokesman, how would you have made that excuse if your commissioner had done something like
called
this?
in sick.
At the midday briefing in the commission.
Stage left. That would have been my answer.
We've done a big list today, which you could see on the Politico website, of some big excuses by politicians over time. Which is your favourite?
It's got to be Didier Reynders, who
the Belgian one,
buying up thousands of lottery tickets in a money laundering scandal. But the thing I can't really decide is whether his red face over that is worse than his black face, which is what he gets up to each December when it is Sinterklaas and Black Pete.
And of course, he denies all wrongdoing in any of these scandals he's caught up in, Ryan. Any other excuses that you like?
Oh, well, I do love the ones of politicians who get caught in gay cruising areas.
Well, this is the one I suggested for our list. This was the Welsh minister 20 years or so ago under the Tony Blair government. A lot of them are British, I have to say. I don't know what that says.
There's an
about the
American
British
who
political
claimed to have a very
establishment.
wide stance in a public toilet stall, and that was his excuse for getting caught there.
Well, this man, I remember it well, a man called Ron Davis, his excuse was that he was in this rather infamous spot because he was looking for badgers.
Yes.
And what was your excuse for falling asleep and not finding playbook that one time?
Oh, well, those...
You don't have an excuse. That was it. I think that says it all.
It was just the once. I did literally fall asleep on the laptop. I blame the martinis.
Should we go back to talk about cheese? What's your favourite cheese, Ryan?
Halloumi, because, and I've got a good story here.
Yeah, because I got in a lot of trouble yesterday when I said that I didn't like halloumi, and a lot of people don't like me saying that.
Indeed, but Australia has received special dispensation to keep calling their halloumi-like cheese halloumi.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, under the EU.
Under the Australia trade deal.
Exactly, for another 5 years. So I think maybe this is just a bid by Australia to move all halloumi production to Australia once and for all, and to get rid of these pesky limits that the EU was able to put on them.
And what is your favourite cheese in Europe?
It's actually halloumi.
Is it? You like it, do you? Well,
because it's like hard and not particularly flavorful, so I don't get offended by any smells. It doesn't leak anywhere.
We have had a few comments from our listeners on the WhatsApp number saying what they thought of what we said yesterday. Fraser from the Netherlands, he agrees with me. He said he thinks halloumi is being like all rubbers, inedible. He said, make mine an aged cheddar, a ripe camembert, or a stinky Munster any day.
Well, at least he's going against type.
We got another comment from the Netherlands. It's a bit of a coincidence. He says the worst cheese is fromage de Bruxelles.
Oh.
And he asked if we got a favourite cheese shop in Brussels. Do you? I don't, because I don't really rate any cheese, so I just get my cheese from Deleuze. But
yeah, I tell other people to bring the cheese to the party because I'm not going to serve it.
We also got a recorded message from Magda in defence of halloumi. This is what she had to say.
Halloumi is the best cheese ever. I find it terribly offensive to hear on the podcast that halloumi is disgusting.
Well, that was a nice, well-balanced comment. Probably is just as well-balanced as I was yesterday. Ryan, have you enjoyed joining us?
I'd love to be invited back.
Well, I think we are going to invite you back next week, if that's all right.
I'll
if you haven't got us into trouble or got us sued in the meantime. That's it from us today then. Remember, you can reach us on our WhatsApp number. The link is in the show notes. You just click on that. You can subscribe and recommend us to a friend when you get the chance. We're going to leave you with a joke that we got because on the back of the cheese conversation, Paul from the UK messaged us and said, this is a joke that his 10-year-old son Ted says a lot. What did the cheese say to itself in the mirror? Hello, me. Ryan, we've only been going for 2 months on this podcast, and this is how far we've fallen. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week, and we'll see everybody else on the podcast again tomorrow.